So thank you for attending this session. You got some choice of meetings or these sessions. As you can tell, I've got a bit of a cold. So a couple of things. One is if I'm standing, my eyes shut, and I sort of doze off, then I've taken too many pills. And if I start hallucinating and started talking about another favorite topic of mine, which could be paddle tennis, and the invasion of paddle around the UK, then I've definitely taken the wrong pills. So what we're going to focus on today is me and the camera. So I've got to stand here. I actually do like to walk around the stage. Is some practical initiatives, which I call accelerators for your digital customer experiences and broadly customer experiences as a whole. And let's see if this works. Okay, so customer experience is one of those topics that's become very broad, very popular. It's not new, as a lot of organizations know, from the old bakery that goes back 100 years to today's digital businesses. And one place that a lot of people focus on are all these wonderful statistics that these highbrow agencies and consultancies put together. And that is not where I want to focus, because I think all of us understand the value of a customer experience and how it can impact revenue and how it can impact reducing some of your costs. So let's move on straight on to what I prefer, which are stories. One thing that you're going to get out of today is some recommendations, and then we'll just take them one at a time. And the first one is about talking with your peers, talking with your colleagues, talking with your friends about what was their most memorable customer experience, digital or not. So I'll give you a quick one from me, and we have to go back to a seamstress a few years ago in Cairo, in Egypt. Happens to be my grandmother, and she opened the shop, and the design of the shop is what this was all about. And it was an L shape, and in the middle was all the workings of all the preparing of the dresses and the jackets and the trousers and all these atelier staff cutting various materials and doing the job that they do. And on the right-hand side, along one side of the building and then the other side of the building, they had raised the floor a couple of feet, and they had put round tables with 4 seats on each one all along. And those were for consultation with customers and with clients. And it went then an absolute storm. Because what would happen is the customer would come in, sit with a person from the atelier, and see the workings in the building. They would see the people working on the various materials, on the various designs. So very quickly there was trust, there was transparency, there was empathy, and they would even call somebody who was a specialist in a type of garment to the table and then send them back into their work. On top of that, the entry between the reception and that room was a corridor walled with materials, and there were panels, and you would just spin the panel and different materials all the way down would appear. So as a customer would walk in, they would touch the different materials, and they would very quickly be into the mood of, I want this, I want to try that, I want to explore this. Now, my grandmother is no longer with us. The shop is still there. If you want to look it up, it's in Cairo, called Eleni. It's still very popular, but that is a classic, very memorable, very strong, the formula still works, customer experience that a testament attracted interest from the royal palace in Cairo, and then they would send dignitaries to come and check what these people were doing. So that's my experience, and I would recommend that you ask your colleagues and your friends what is their true memorable one. Now that you learned a bit about me, let me give you a quick shameless plug of the company that I work for. Course5 is an analytics and insights organization. We predominantly work within the realm of digital transformations, because that's where there's a lot of activity around analytics. And then the spaces we focus on are either market initiatives, so analytics for understanding your market, understanding segments, interpreting research, digital with customers, online, offline, and then lastly with competitive analysis. We're a global organization. We work with business to business as well as business to consumer. We've already had some conversations this morning, folks specifically in FMCG, and their space is a lot of B to B to C. And I think we're going to see more of that in some of these industries. And along the way, we've won a few awards. So what I'd like to leave you with is 5 practical ideas, accelerators, recommendations from this session. So we'll start with some simple ones. Intent is something that is what I would call direction of travel on this topic, customer experience. And it's a big one to accelerate the initiatives inside your teams, inside your organization. So my first question to you is, does anybody recognize this? Does anybody know which company this represents? It's just a share price, started around 97. That's sort of a giveaway. No? Okay, very topical for customer experience. It happens to be Amazon. And the reason why I've chosen this is if you look, and somebody did this, they looked at all the annual reports that Jeff and his team produce, and in every single report, 21 of them, they drum home that message of customer experience. Now, I don't know if you can read these from the back, but they vary from being customer-centric to building self-service facilities for their customers to understanding true customer delight, and then it goes on and on and on. So the takeaway from here is direction of travel, but being relentless at it, and ideally from the top, around customer experience is a huge priority for this business. In some companies that we've worked with, it tends to sit within the CMO organization, and that's fine as long as it starts from the top, and in others it goes a little broader depending on the size of the organization. Next easy one, video. I'm sure you've seen a lot of statistics here, a lot of background, but I'll give you something to bring it to life. This is various inputs from several UK agencies that have been looking into this. On the left is a summary of what is going on in Facebook, i.e. their prioritization based on their algorithms and a reflection of what people are doing in Facebook. Now, we all know the size of the population of people on Facebook, and the top 2 items are video. Real-time and video. And that's a huge takeaway from what is going on, in the biggest social platform on the planet. And then on the right-hand side, it's a typical summary of, 1 internet minute and everything that goes on, and you can read the various, Snapchat and Twitter and WhatsApp and all the rest of it. And it's a lot of volume, admittedly. But if you work backwards, at the bottom is Facebook, and we just described what is the top of the pops at Facebook. Then you've got YouTube, and it's all video. Then we look at what you are all exchanging on WhatsApp, and you look at the data behind WhatsApp, again, video. So we can label this, but we can also start looking about the different generations. I happen to have 4 kids, 2 teenagers, 2 coming up to being teenagers. And they are that classic generation of a bit fickle, a bit butterfly across all the platforms. And where is the video? Where is the video? Have you got a video for that? And I'd go further, baby boomers such as myself, we go into meetings, and where it would be maybe a conversation about a demonstration, maybe a conversation about understanding how something works, senior executives are turning around saying, do you have a video for that? Fine, we can organize a demo in the future. But do you have a video? I would like to share the video with some of my peers, and I will come back to you. So video is becoming a currency that is just automatic, and so it is very much an important one. Now, some of you are sitting there going, we do videos, but they're not cheap. And then some of you are working for large organizations with a lot of brand equity. And so these videos are expensive. And it varies, by scale of company, experience, and what your intent is. I get agencies reach out to me trying to persuade me to build videos. I ask how much it costs, and they say $3,000, $5,000 for the first video, 60 seconds. And I'm thinking, okay, we're not going to make money of these a year. If you look around, there are today companies where you can build a video for $49. And that $49 is a monthly fee. And they give you all the Lego blocks online, and you can build your video. Now, is it the best video on the planet? No. But can it incorporate some of your own assets? Maybe you got an interview, maybe you got some brand, maybe you got some images that you'd like to incorporate. But now think about the power of combining cost-effective production of video, $49 a month, 1 video a month, and then it goes up by tiers. I think the company is called Get Promo or Promo. And suddenly you can really move down this avenue and feed into that hunger for video, which is prevalent and all the data backs it up. So that's a key area. And if not still persuaded, I don't know how many of you read Mary's work. She used to work for a bank, and she did a lot of work around the internet. About 8-9 years ago, she got recruited by an investment research company called Kleiner Perkins, and she produces these massive reports every year about internet trends. Fantastic work. You should look her up. She talks about consumption, mobile, penetration, geography, all sorts of information. And they are, 100-page decks that she produces. Takeaway here, we collectively, daily, would spend about 10 minutes on video, and that's tripled from 2013 to today. And it's only going in one way. So is video a very important accelerator in your digital customer experience? I believe so. Next one, it gets more tricky as we progress here. Customer journey. Again, I don't know how many of you are actually looking at customer journey in detail. There's the digital one, then there's multiple digital ones, then there's the offline, then there's the email. It could look like this, okay? This is a bit complicated, and I'm sure a lot of you cannot read this. There's the classic stages of exploring, research, purchase, and daily use, and then all the touch points from the social channel to the agent to the self-service to all the pieces that go with it. And these are quite common. As I said, we get involved in digital transformations, and quite often the executives will come to us and say, oh, we just had a consultancy in, one of these highbrow consultancies, and they've produced this beautiful map, this very complex 40-slide deck, and it talks about everything and anything. And then at each stage, they break it down, and they talk about how do you compare with your peers in this industry? How do you compare with your competitors in the industry? How do you compare with the geography that you're in? And the data breaks down, and then there's opportunity, and it's more detail and more detail. It's great. It is complicated, but it's overwhelming. And then you get the next stage. And again, there's more detail. And the problem with all this is that it's quite large, quite consultative, very intricate, but how do you put this into place? So my recommendation would be to start slightly somewhere else. If your customer journey is relatively stable and your digital transformation is not going to bamboozle it, right? Then start, and this is a Gartner chart, start with ownership. Break down the different parts of the journey, and here we're looking at, a classic ordering journey, and then work out each team within the company, which part they own. And that way, you're already halfway in that adoption of whatever is going to come out, because we have declared ownership of the different teams and how they impact the overall journey. And once we've agreed ownership and there is, participation at that level, then we go to what does the market research tell us? What does our competitor tell us? So here I've just chosen 4. You might have 6 or 7. And then for each one, we decide that this is important for us, for our business, for our industry. So immediate responsive service, predictive anticipatory services, and so on, right? And each one has its own statistics. So back to those teams that we talked about, sales, marketing, customer services, and so on, each one should be tasked with looking at all of this. So each team, what are you doing for providing consistency for that customer journey section? And what are you doing about value exchanges? And what are you doing about predictive? Maybe they can't all do something. But then you're cutting that massive map into very practical things, and what comes out of that is eventually a map, of course. But you don't start with bowling the ocean, and then the executives in the company going, but who's going to implement all this? This is really complex. So that's another takeaway, ownership. Can't talk about customer experience without talking about metrics. There are many. There's been many deployed for the digital world more recently. Personally, I think, again, it's worth looking at what's around us and not trying to get too caught up with a lot of complexity before working out where to focus our energy. We have limited resources, limited people. This is some work that was done by Forrester, which surprised a lot of people. And what it's saying is some industries have a particular relationship with investing more in CX. And in retail, there seems to be a direct correlation. The more you invest in customer experience, the more growth you get in return. And you can begin to see that, depending on the categories that you sell and the basket that, is available for purchase. But in wireless, where we're buying a contract, there's only so much you can buy from a wireless contract. So you can add customer investment or customer experience investment, but then eventually tails off. And knowing that about your industry, which industries you are the most aligned to, is a big help. And then banking, the evidence says that because there's always upside with a lot of financial products, investments, and retail banking offerings as they get bigger and wider, then there's potentially an exponential increase as they invest more in customer experience. So that's sort of a high level. Looking at metrics, as I said, there's a few. I'm sure a lot of you in the room are using some of these or aspiring to use more of these, and there's horses for courses. I think it's worth understanding how they work and where they're effective and where they're less effective. So Net Promoter Score, very popular. Many people say not that effective. Some people say super effective, depending on, if you're the CEO of a company and you just want to score, or you're trying to actually make a difference in the customer experience. But what's interesting is that you can do Net Promoter Score at different levels of the organization, and that's an important takeaway. So, quick summary of what Net Promoter Score is. I'm sure all of you know this, so I'm not going to dwell on that, but let me give you another story. Because I have a cold, I've put a few logos to remind me of each story, okay? So here I was talking with an airport, and we were specifically talking about the online journeys and some of the analytics that they wanted to improve and get better insights from. And then we got onto the conversation about NPS. And the conversation was comparing one airport to the other. And to cut a long story short, some of us in the room said, we prefer Heathrow to Gatwick. And by the way, the airport I'm talking about is in the UK, but not in England. So you can second guess where that is. And then we debated that further, and then we started looking at some of the data, and it was clear that parts of the Gatwick experience was all about the early experience of security and immigration. That is very diverse from, say, Terminal 5. Now, we can go in a lot about design. The beauty about Terminal 5, and if you look at all the queues at Disney parks and all the rest of it, is if you can show somebody where they're going, they don't mind queuing. But if they're queuing and they can't see where they're going, frustration builds up. And that was a big differentiator at Gatwick and Terminal 5. Terminal 5, you can see the building. You know exactly where you're going. Yeah, you're queuing, but you can see where you're going. It's all nice and wide, and you feel you know where you're going. Back to NPS, the conversation went, should we have an NPS at security? Should we have an NPS when we get to the gate and all the shopping around the gate? And the answer is yes. Otherwise, you're getting an overall picture that is heavily tainted by one part of the airport. And the example there for NPS is an airport is quite an extensive journey. It's not like buying an Oyster card online where it's really quick. Your experience in an airport is actually emotional, can be stressful, can be exciting, where, depending on destination, who you're with and all the rest of it. And it's not 10 minutes. Okay? So, again, horses for courses. The next one I would pick is customer effort. Very prevalent. It is one that we all experience. We can go back to, the days when we're all trying to put cable in our homes and some of the challenges there, or, some of the loyalty cards we were trying to activate. And we all have our own experiences about effort. But the world has moved on in terms of measurement for effort. And there are more and more organizations that help you with emotional measurement, as well as functional, as well as cognitive, and it's worth looking into that. So here's a quick example for you. Maybe it applies to your products and services, but it's quite a generic one. So we start with the top left, where we've purchased the product, we encounter an issue, and that product could be something that we have in the house, it might be sitting on our mobile, maybe it's something at work. And in today's world, we'll do a quick Google search and try and see if we can get to an answer quickly. Sometimes a Google search, you'll find some self-help from a different company, because they specialize in aggregating some of these in the right places. You're not getting anywhere. Then you go to the assisted help of the brand that provided you the product or the service. You don't get further. You call the agent, and then you wait. And then you might have to be passed on to another team, but there's quite a bit of waiting involved because they're not encouraging you to spend time with agents. They're encouraging you to be more self-service and more online. So then through the website, you finally give up and you go, okay, what do you recommend from your own brand website? And then it recommends some steps, and you start doing the steps. And then you eventually get through to an agent because you've given up on that one, and you do trial and error, and it doesn't work, and then you give up. So customer effort here is on the elements that I talked about. There's the physical side, there's the number of hours, there's the emotional side. And a lot of companies are beginning to work out areas where they can invest in breaking that down and making those steps a lot more intuitive, cognitive, and useful. So embedding support in the product. This is a massive expansion now in all the gaming world, where they're building in a lot of information, not for playing the game, but all the pieces around the actual game and the support. Contextual self-help, and I'll come on to that as an example of what we mean by that. And then seamlessness between channels. So you break down the journey, and then you've got to try and find ways to avoid somebody exiting and going somewhere else to try and get help on your brand, right? And then trying to resolve themselves. So we can't talk about customer experience without talking about call centers. And if you can read that, at the top, again, a survey, top of the pops, reduce customer effort. So call centers is the same place. Number 2, CX automation for engagement. Number 3, improve voice of the customer strategy. So we're in the same place. It's a major metric that needs to be adopted and fully understood. Now I'll tell you a story. My mother's in town at the moment, and she lives in Greece. I'm half Greek myself. And she's been having problems with her phone. And what happens is I'm in the office, my wife is working, the kids are half term, so everybody's doing things, we're not really able to help her, and she's forgotten her code. She's in the mid-70s. So she tries once, I don't know how many of you know. Once you try it a couple of times, it freezes you out for a minute, then it freezes you out for 15 minutes, then it freezes you out for a little longer, and then it just blocks you out. Okay? So at that point, what do? Well, you actually go through what I just went through, right? You went through that whole thing. And I can assure you, me and my wife spent hours trying to unravel this, and not naming names, not saying that, Apple is better or worse than anybody else. But my mother does not have a laptop that's connected to an iPhone. My mother does not have iTunes. And half the things to actually navigate that is to connect it to a laptop that has iTunes in order to unlock the phone. And make sure that you backed it all up in the cloud. Otherwise, when you press reset, it clears the phone. So these are massive emotional decisions my mother is having to do on something that she just thought, okay, I forgot the code, big deal. I've got my Apple ID, I've got my password, what is the problem? Just unlock it for me, right? So hopefully you're getting the picture of, I'm not picking bones or anything, but I'm just saying that is what, that experience could look like, and it's not intuitive. Why do I need a laptop? Why do I need an iTunes account? I'm sorry, I bought the phone, and I just want to get back into it, right? And you give me unique IDs, I can tell you who I am. I can verify the email. And then lastly, simulation. I mentioned 5. This has come up more and more recently because people have realized that to connect a lot of data points to then determine how to build an understanding of customer experience is time-consuming. It's actually quite complicated if you're going to bring in voice of the customer, if you're going to bring CRM data, and if you're going to bring digital journeys together to then determine. So some organizations have started building simulators, and with the development of advanced analytics, with the development of some of the AI modeling, like some of the Bayesian causality models that you can get hold of, some of these relationships can be built to then determine which key variables will impact my CX experience the most or the least, and combination thereof. So this is what it would look like, for example. This is a utility organization. Again, I'm not sure if you can read that, but there are things like billing and payment programs, customer focus, bill management of the research that they've collected on that, communication levels, different levels of communication. And so what's behind here is obviously data that's been accumulated via research and surveys, and then the models are trying to correlate relationships, and then through very simple tweaking, we can determine where we should focus our efforts. So it's direction of travel for CX. And, this is one. Clearly, we're going to be highly dependent on data. And, I get involved in a lot of conversations about data. Some people have some, and it's possibly not stitched together. Some people have a lot, but what they called a consumer last year, now they call something else this year. The variable has changed. So how do we stitch all that? It is not straightforward. It can be done. You can bring a year or 18 months of data together. This is another one. So this is a market mix modeling for a technology company in the US. The traffic in the other one was customers. This is prospects. So the data and the variables that we're collecting here are different to the first simulator. So as I promised, and I'm getting the nod here, I talked about 5 takeaways from today's session. And in summary, we have that relentless focus on customer experience. Ideally, it should come from the top. It should come from the executive so that people embrace it and truly focus on a combination of getting creative in that experience, as well as the metrics, as well as the journey. Video, I think, anybody who does not believe it is an absolute must, then it's not looking at the same data that I'm looking at. And that in practice means not one video, not 5 videos, but many videos. And those videos have to be available in various channels. Maybe on your website, maybe on your apps, maybe in social media, maybe on YouTube, maybe on USB stick that you give to your clients if you're heavily into B2B and you got salespeople on the floor. But it is a medium that people are craving for. I'm sure you all commute at some point, whether you're going to an airport or you're going to the office. Look at what people are doing on their commutes. They're looking at videos. So it's an easy one, I think. Customer journey, ownership is a big word here. It's easy to get caught up with a lot of detailed analysis. Our recommendation is, or my recommendation particularly, I used to be a consultant for many years. My recommendation is try and bring in ownership early in order that when you get to the point where you're doing the analysis and you can start making changes, those individual teams have put their hand up and say, yeah, I own that piece of the customer journey. I'll give you some help. Metrics. There are many KPIs. 2 things I recommend for senior meetings and senior executives. One is have a look at the various customer experience metrics available. Think about your industry. Think about your particular customers. And then on top of that, think about KPIs in a slightly different way, which is, I don't know how many of you heard of the difference between a lagging indicator and a leading indicator. Let's take schools, okay? If you've got children, and I've got a few, a leading indicator is the booklet that the kid brings home, and I have to sign that they have read the book. And that is a leading indicator for the school because their data has shown that if the parent is involved in nurturing the reading of a child, a lot of things take care of themselves, as opposed to outsource the reading to the teacher and let them get on with it. So the leading indicator is for better understanding of a class, of the language, of the reading. So the leading indicator is me getting to sign that little booklet at home because that triggers the chain that has proven the data works. And then lastly, we talked about simulation. It's relatively new. I wouldn't say it's 5 years old, but there is a lot of development in that space. As a bonus, there's another 5. You can talk to us, talk to me. You can look them up. These are not, proprietary by any way, but, It is not a short list of things. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've got your 5 takeaways today. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your attention. Thank you.